Hello and welcome, everyone. We are excited to have you here with us today. We'll be getting started in just a moment, so I will ask you to please join me in welcoming our NAP staff. Welcome, Deanna Musso, who will help center our conversation today.
Hello, Aumedakiapi, Chante Washte Nape Chiyuzape. Hello, my relatives. I'm greeting you with a happy heart. My name is Deanna Musso. I'm from the Kuichasha Oyate tribe and the Oglala tribe, both located here in South Dakota. I'm a youth programs lead with Native Americans in Philanthropy, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to today's member education session focused on tribal tourism. Today, we're going to explore the important role that Native tourism plays in strengthening the economies of tribal nations with three incredible panelists. Across reservations and Native communities, tourism is more than a boost to local economies. It's a meaningful way for us to share our rich cultures, traditions, and unique histories with visitors from all walks of life. We welcome guests from across the country and beyond into our communities to experience firsthand the beauty and hospitality that define who we are. Whether it's exploring historical sites, participating in cultural events, or supporting Native-owned businesses, we invite you to learn more, engage respectfully, and celebrate with us. I'm excited to dive into this conversation with you all today and learn more. To get us started, I'd like to welcome NAP's Education Resource Facilitator, our MES moderator, Sean Dean Vanderveer.
Deanna. Yat binish doshidene, Sean Dean Vanderveer Yinishia, Bilagana Nishlit, Achitni Bashishtin, Bilagana Dashichet, Inanjini Dashanella. Welcome, everyone. I hope you are all enjoying a bright and awakening spring so far. My name is Sean Dean Vanderveer. I am a citizen of the Navajo Nation. I'm joining you all today from the state of New York. I'm very excited to have you all here today. Again, we're very excited as we're nearing the end of Tsanso, the month of big leaves in Dinepazad, in recognition of Mother Earth being fully awake and thriving, nurtured by our most rainy season. I hope it is sunny where you are. It is extremely rainy in New York today. Native Americans in Philanthropy is in final preparation mode as we near our first annual conference upcoming next month, co-hosted with Hispanics in Philanthropy. Registration sold out quickly this year, so if you weren't able to join us, we hope to see you in 2026. Honestly, we are just so honored to continue providing these virtual discussion spaces like these for our community to share knowledge and truly re-envision philanthropy's role in uplifting Indigenous communities. So again, thank you for joining Native Americans in Philanthropy as we continue to promote equitable and effective philanthropy in Native communities through collaborative growth and action. I'd like to take a moment to thank Deanna again for her welcome in centering us in today's conversation and for starting us off in a good way. Deanna recently joined our team here at NAP as programs lead for our youth initiatives, supporting our Native Youth Grantmakers program, among many others. We're very excited to have her here with us and are looking forward to having more of you and our members engage with her work in the future. As she mentioned, we are dedicating today's session to tribal tourism, its role in the economic and cultural prosperity of Native communities around the world, and the organizations that are leading the reestablishment of more sustainable models that center and benefit the local communities that are being impacted. It's undeniable the love that we have for the land that we all inhabit. She sustains us and gives us new ways to learn humility and respect every single day. And many Indigenous communities have long recognized the responsibility that lies with being able to enjoy its beauty working to ensure our future ancestors will have that same opportunity that to experience the joys of traveling and experiencing new cultures. Each of our speakers today are a part of this drive, creating tourism opportunities that recenter Indigenous communities, promote respectful cultural awareness, and foster economic growth. Together, they are helping shape a sustainable and truly inclusive future within one of the largest sectors. With all of that said, I'm excited to get started. Stacey, Sherry, and Mālia each bring a unique perspective and incredible experience to this conversation, and I'm excited to delve deeper into the work that organizations are accomplishing in the field today. So, speakers, as you're called, please introduce yourself and your affiliations however you feel comfortable. Stacey, I will offer it to you to start us off.
Washte. Good day. Glad to be here and joining and glad to be participating. Stacey LaCompte. I am from the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe and the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe. I reside in North Dakota, in Bismarck, North Dakota. I'm the executive director for the North Dakota Native Tourism Alliance.
Thank you, Stacey. Sherry, if you would like to go next.
Sherry Rupert. My name is Sherry Rupert, and I'm the CEO for the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association. We're headquartered here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I'm very excited to be here today to share with you about Indigenous tourism and to be on the panel with these lovely ladies.
Happy to have you, Sherry. Thank you so much. And Mālia, if you would like to also introduce yourself.
Vilina Maike Aloha. My name is Mālia Sanders. I'm the executive director of the Native Hawaiian Hospitality Association. I've been in tourism now for 25 years, even though I'm only, 20 years old. But really at the core of what we do is to support those working in the workforce in Hawaii and our Native Hawaiian small businesses to help grow their capacity so that we can engage in tourism in meaningful ways for our people and provide economic equity and prosperity.
Thank you again for each of you for joining us today. I'm very excited to delve into the work that you've accomplished over your professional careers and for the organizations that you're representing today. I would like to start us off for those of us in our audience who may be newer to the cultural tourism conversation. Can you help us understand why it's important for Indigenous communities to reclaim and lead their own tourism economies? I know that's a broad question to start off with, but Sherry, I will offer that to you to get the ball rolling.
Sure. Indigenous tourism has to be Indigenous led. We can't no longer afford to have our stories told by others. These are our homelands, our people, our traditions, and our lived truth. And we're the only ones that can tell that story. So we must be telling that story. But we need allies. We need supporters to help us to do this. And because the tourism industry has not historically included us, and the tourism system also does not include us. In this country, tourism is funded by room tax funds, and there is a whole tourism infrastructure. As sovereigns, our priority is our people. And when we levy taxes, those funds go to taking care of our people through supporting education, law enforcement, healthcare, not often to the state or to the local Convention and Visitors Bureau for tourism marketing. So when you don't pay into this system, then you're left out. So that's why we need the support to build the capacity and infrastructure for our unique needs within the tourism industry.
Absolutely. Stacey, would you like to add anything onto Sherry's opening?
Yeah, Sherry kind of explained a lot of it. Because now it's our time because the demand is really high. People want to come and learn our cultural heritage. We did a survey several years back, and that demand was extremely high. And we got to thinking, well, now, we need to tell our own stories with our own cultural voices, our own history, without it being in the books or in the movies, and landing it within our own tribal nations with that funding. I mean, with that, the tourism aspect, I mean, it's sustainable economy through tourism for our tribal nations. And let's come back to bringing that sustainable economy back.
It has untapped potential. Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Mālia, if you would like to add anything.
Sure. In Hawaii, tourism generates over $20 billion in revenue. And that number is gigantic. Yet the Native Hawaiian community are some of the most economically challenged community in our state. And on top of that, we're also dealing with a very mature tourism model here in Hawaii. And our state has actually realized how valuable Hawaiian culture is to the overall marketing strategy of our place. And so there's a constant push and pull. There's a constant of butting heads over control over tourism and whose voices should be represented. But also we have a lot of opportunities there in that space to provide economic opportunities for Native Hawaiian communities throughout the state of Hawaii. But it's a matter of dealing with historical traumas, trust issues, even intellectual property rights are really big here, because our culture should not be commodified for the benefit of someone else to make money off of it. And so I think when I listen to Sherry and Stacey speak on those things, you know, we're all sort of dealing with the same problems in different ways. And I use the example of whack-a-mole a lot when I speak. That's the game where you're destined to lose it. It always gets faster and faster. And as you mature in your tourism model, more problems pop up in your community. And so you have to really be thinking ahead, and how are you going to address these concerns as they come up? And also just really thinking about, we're here to play the long game. Natives are in tourism to play the long game with it. And we have to have a lot of patience sometimes for ourselves and for our own communities. But also really at the end of the day, it's really about providing economic opportunities to our people so that we can thrive in the places where we live, that are our spaces for our people.
Thank you, Mālia. You tapped on it a little bit, but given the wide geographic range that your organizations represent today, I would personally love if you could each share how the natural and cultural landscapes of your region shape your tourism economies. Mālia, I'm going to take this right back to you, because Hawaii is one of the most well-known spaces. It's undeniable. So if you could lead us off in that conversation, I'd greatly appreciate it.
I think worldwide, Hawaii has a certain essence. It makes you feel a certain something. You can close your eyes and visualize sandy beaches, beautiful mountains, waterfalls, rainbows. And beyond that, Hawaii is a very challenging place to live. It's one of the most expensive places to live. We are priced out of our housing situation here in Hawaii, where the average mean home is over $1 million. And when you start to do the math of, how does one support living here, you have to be making in the six figures, and probably have an extra person living in your household in order to make it possible to really thrive here. And so part of the responsibility of that comes from having a very mature model of tourism. We in our culture are quite hospitable to begin with. That's the nature of who we are as people. And all of that welcoming over the course of time, we often get visitors who move to our destination and price us out of living here. And so I think the challenge of that, trying to balance, how do we change the narrative of how we market our destination so people that visit us provide more respect to our destination, want to find a way to give back to our communities, care for our lands in a way that doesn't leave them in a state of constant disrepair? How do we preserve these special places forever? And tourism has an opportunity to do that. It hasn't historically done that, but we're moving into this new way of thinking and way of approaching it that is quite unique for our destination. And I'm happy to share a little bit more about what some of those strategies are. But I think I'll hand it off to Sherry and Stacey and leave it there.
Thank you, Mālia. Stacey, I saw you nodding along with Mālia at one point when she was talking about the preservation aspect of your region. If you could delve into a little bit what that looks like for the North Dakota Native Tourism Alliance.
Well, when we started out, it was just like we need to preserve, protect, and respect our culture in educating the people to the world. I mean, that's where we had to go, because we're in a lot of people's eyes, and that's not with the non-natives, but it's with our own people. They don't, we have to educate them too, along with everybody else, in teaching them. So then we put the system together. Well, the whole state of North Dakota is Indian country. We have history within the whole state. So then let's educate everybody on this and bring them all in. And there's a lot more of educating, I believe, so that we can get that respect of who we are in our cultural history.
Thank you. And Sherry, I know you represent a very wide geographic range, so it may be difficult to encapsulate how it influences your tourism economy, but it's one of the largest, sectors in this nation. If you could speak a little bit about its very heavy influence.
Yes, that's what I was going to say, is our range here at IANTA, the entire nation, essentially. And I think that, the work that we do across the nation with, all of the tourism tribes and the indigenous owned businesses, each one is very different. And, I've seen a lot of indigenous owned businesses really just amazing experiences, and just so true to who they are and where they're from, the homelands that they're from. And it's just amazing to see how they are just unapologetically, native. And when people come to their lands, it's all about, and I've heard it, from everybody so far, respecting that land, respecting the people, respecting their traditions. And I think, that's one thing here in the Southwest. Down here in Albuquerque area, there are 19 pueblos here, and I've been to many of them. And, you can't have phones and take any video while you're at any of their celebrations or ceremonies. They invite you in to come in to partake and to be there with them and learn, but you can't take that with you. It's theirs. And I love that about our Native people, that they're utilizing and sharing of themselves, of their traditions, of their people. And, when you walk away, it's just such an amazing, transformative experience, unlike that you'll ever have, anywhere else, because it's only here in this country that we have our indigenous people. So I think I get the benefit of seeing it all across the nation.
That's very true. I want to delve a little bit more into the unique position that your organization holds as the only national organization dedicated to promoting cultural tourism. As you have been collaborating with partners in the field, you were speaking before about Native community leaders or partner organizations that are much smaller or regional focused. Do you have any biggest priorities that jump out at you that you are hearing from community partners in the field right now?
Yeah, there's, excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. A few of our priorities right now, of course, are funding, and then also ensuring that that we're a trusted partner within the tourism industry. And so the tourism system or industry recognizes the state tourism departments as the destination marketing organizations that receive funding from the states and from the federal government. One example that I can give is during COVID, the pandemic, the American Recovery Act funding distributed through the Economic Development Administration, or EDA, non-competitive travel, tourism, and outdoor recreation funding opportunities. And that was designed to aid in the recovery from the devastating impacts of the pandemic, the shutdowns to the industry. And those funds went exclusively to the states and territories of the United States to support tourism marketing, infrastructure, workforce, and other projects to rejuvenate safe leisure, business, and international travel, with none of the $510 million of the relief funding being set aside for Native nations and communities. Our communities, by being consistently left out of the tourism funding support structures, including relief funding in the wake of the economic devastation caused by the pandemic, are not on an even playing field with the entirety of the U.S. tourism and marketing infrastructure. And when questioned about this ill-conceived strategy, we were told it was our hope, the federal government's hope, that the states would work with their tribes. And so there are some examples where some state DMOs are working with their tribes and small indigenous owned businesses like North Dakota, for example. But there are others that find it easier to just use our photos of our beautiful culture and not really work with our indigenous businesses to create that content and to build those relationships. IANTA has entered into an agreement with the Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada to adapt the original accreditation program for Native nations and communities engaged in tourism in the United States. ITAC developed the original accreditation program in 2019, and they launched the model successfully with the First Nations in Canada. And with adaptation by IANTA, we will launch in the United States. So here's what we've learned. To build trust in Indigenous tourism product within the tourism infrastructure and with the broader visitor marketplace, brand standards must be developed and implemented. IANTA recognized more coordination, training, standard implementation, and engagement is needed to build brand trust beyond the micro approach to engage and provide access to tourism systems at the local, state, regional, national, and international levels. The original model, once adapted to U.S. Indigenous tourism product, has the ability to build product reliability, connect product to the industry and to consumers, and fill the gap in access to the visitor marketplace. Without collaborative brand development and reliability, Native nations and communities are excluded from the industry and therefore have to continually go it alone, creating tourism initiatives and programming at a micro level as opposed to the rest of the industry that's supported at the macro level. So IANTA's adaptation of the original model, industry engagement, and visitor outreach are intended to build product reliability and trust in Indigenous tourism across the tourism continuum to engage partners and visitors and the unique Indigenous tourism product and destinations across the United States.
That is a very exciting project, Sherry. My goodness. I'm very excited to hear that we're collaborating with First Nations as well. I know that their perspective is not represented here today, but they are a very large Indigenous community that is also experiencing the both positive and negative effects that come with travel tourism. Mm-hmm. Please keep us updated on that work. That is incredibly exciting. We've talked so far a lot about the need for trust between partnerships, for collaborating across many different organizations. Could you offer any advice for cultivating and sustaining those needed partnerships, potentially with non-Indigenous allies within the field? I mean, we have a lot of federal travel entities that we've talked about, private corporations that Mālia touched on that may be competing for these resources. Could you offer any advice, Stacey? I will offer that to you to start us off.
Yeah, we've been building our, in the last couple of years, we've been building what our partnership and collaboration with a lot of entities, foundation, other partners within our state, and then the state partnership. We've been at legislation. So we're bringing in this whole loop now of collaborating in partnership with the whole state. So there, for an example, we're starting what we call regional tours. So that's building up. I mean, there's sites out there that are being led, non-native led, and they are now reaching out to us and to see if they're telling the true story. Is this our story, or is it their story that they understand is their story? So we've been reaching out with them, and then we're building our tours off of that, and kind of collaborating with everybody into bridging that so that we can all partner together and collaborate together. We all have to work together to bring these tours and the visitors in. We have the high capacity of a lot of tours coming in last year. And then, this year, with things going on, it's kind of a little bit of a slump, but we're still moving forward with it, and it's still happening. But you have to build in with the whole state, with everybody. I mean, the state, the federal partners, even we call the region borders of our tribes within, the cities, the towns, everything else like that that are connected with our tribes, and close to our tribes. So let's build that partnership with them, and we all collaborate, but make it understanding that we want to tell our story. We want to tell our own voice with that. So we've been doing a lot of that, and it's working out very well.
That's exciting to hear. Being honestly, Indigenous peoples everywhere are the original storytellers. So making that clear in any partnership seems incredibly important. Mālia, Sherry, would you like to add anything to that question? If you could offer any advice for cultivating these relationships?
Go ahead.
I don't want to. Do you mind, Sherry, if I
Go ahead.
the question first? I think because Hawaii's had a unique position in the sense that our Hawaiian culture being recognized as part of an important part of tourism came way after the development of tourism in Hawaii. There was this idea that Hawaiian culture back 60 years ago, 100 years ago, was perceived to be all of South Pacific culture. And we're still dealing with that today. And I think one of the challenges that frustrates me the most is that we all say that we want to be great partners. We really do intend to do that. But what ends up happening is that the relationship becomes parasitic. The tourism industry needs Native Hawaiians to be a part of their team in order to execute tourism in an authentic and culturally sensitive way. However, when you look at the return on the investment of that, they're making millions and millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. And none of that is coming back to the community to support the community's well-being. And I think had we had the opportunity from the very beginning to intercept ourselves into the system, we may be dealing with a totally different, present time. But because we're sort of going into it from the back end and trying to fix it and trying to infuse culture in a very robust tourism model, it's very difficult to do. And I don't see the addressing of critical need in our communities by tourism. And I hate to sound like a Debbie Downer, but that's the reality of it, is that if you wait to the point that it becomes so mature that they figure out how to do it without you, they will do it without you. Mm-hmm. And they will do very little to make it appear that it is checked off of a list, rather than to truly execute the benefit of tourism. The benefit of tourism is for thriving communities where it exists. That is what tourism is designed to do. And if it is not doing that, which I feel personally it's not doing that, then we need to really figure out a way to infiltrate the model. And whether that's through legislation or uniting of Native voices in whatever place that's happening. For us, I'm just not seeing tourism address the critical needs of our community and the broader community of Hawaii, because it's not just Native Hawaiians who are struggling financially here. It's every local person that lives here. So what is the return on the investment of tourism if it is not giving the community the things that it needs? So for me, I think a little bit more critically, in the sense that I want to be a great partner, but oftentimes that partnership is very parasitic. They need something out of me. And so they make it sound all roses and sunshine when really it's not that. It's about extracting something from Native Hawaiians and doing so in a way that is really promoting leakage of whatever it is that's the benefit. It's leaking out and it's not getting into the right hands of the community. If you're going to make millions and millions of dollars, you can't just donate $5,000 to a nonprofit and say that's equitable, you know?
Mhm.
That's sort of where I stand with it. And I hate to sound like a very angry Native or a very I don't know, like I hate to sound like such a downer, but it is the reality of the situation I'm working within.
Absolutely. In order for real change, you have to have sometimes uncomfortable discussions and highlighting very real obstacles to reciprocity, understanding that we have to have a common goal in mind that benefits both of us if we're going to move forward at all.
And I think maybe part of the underlying and underpinning issue in Hawaii is that we don't have our own sovereign nation. We don't have the ability to form our own corporations that truly benefit only us. And so we're part of the mix. And so that voice becomes diluted amongst the masses. And there are Natives who have varying perspectives on how that should be done. Native Hawaiians also can't agree as to how to effectively make change in this space.
Thank you for sharing, Mālia. Sherry, would you like to offer any advice that you've experienced over the years for collaborating with non-Indigenous or even within your own Indigenous communities?
Right. So in regard to partnerships, we have to have partners for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. We can't do this alone. We have to have allies like yourselves. And I know that for us, you know, we do see the extraction in some states where, you know, the state DMOs are utilizing our likeness, our photos in their marketing, and yet they have no relationship with the Indigenous people in that state. And that's wrong. And I think that we at IANTA, we've recognized this, and we've really tried to enhance our efforts as far as, you know, marketing Indigenous-owned Indigenous destinations and experiences, because we understand the nuances of working in our Indigenous space. We understand what photos can be used and which should not be used. We understand our people. I mean, I'm not saying that we're all knowing. We learn too, you know, as we go across the country and visit our Indigenous communities. But we are trying also to educate the industry. And so we have several agreements, MOUs with industry organizations, with state DMOs, where we're educating them about working with Indigenous, working with tribes and helping them to build relationships. And that it's not a one and done, you know, give me some photos, this has been great, you know, move on. It's about building long lasting relationships. And I think it was Mālia said that, you know, we're here for the long run, for the the long term, and you have to have those relationships with people. You know, we've been wronged so many times, and we're very cautious about who we work with and how we work with them. So building that relationship is building trust between each other, so you can work with each other. So we're doing a lot more work with DMOs across the country, working with them, helping them to do the outreach to their tribes, helping them to work with those tribes to build content. And one of the things that I've seen even at this level is you enter into agreements, and it's all about, you know, that other entity wanting to, that everything that you do with them is owned by them. And so all the agreements that we're entering into now, I've put in there that it's to be jointly owned. If we create these things together, then we should own them too. And so I think it's things like that as you're building partnerships, not only educating, but also making sure that you're covered, that you will own something in the end as well. So we continue to build partnerships with our industry allies so we can bring benefits to our members, so we can bring back information and knowledge that will help our members to be successful in this huge thing that we call the tourism industry.
Thank you, Sherry. It's I remember Mālia earlier talking about the need for ownership of intellectual rights. Even it is sovereignty in practice. I mean, we have to incorporate that throughout all of our partnerships, no matter what sector we're in. I do want to take a moment to highlight a very unique alliance, a very unique partnership. I would like to, Stacey, if you could, given the unique makeup of your particular organization, the first of its kind, could you tell us about the Alliance's origin of need and how the tribes are continuing to collaborate?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, the North Dakota Native Tourism Alliance was created in 2016 through the Native Act with the George Washington University Tourism Institute that assisted us to bringing us together. And how its inception became forward was basically as we need to tell our own story. There was a lot of things going on, and where is our sustainable economy? You know, we need to bring that back to our tribal nations. So they were established, and each one of our tribes went through a lot of training for tourism development and bringing that out there and educating. But we had to go to each tribal nation. We developed what we call our leadership teams on each one of our nations, because you can have your tribal buy-in, but you need to have your community buy-in with your leaders and the community itself to agreement. Because if you look within our own, your own nations, you're going to get people that don't understand what tourism is and why do we want to do that. They were worried about the sacred sites, the history and what is protected and not protected. So that's why it was very important that we did the community meetings. We had a leadership team within each nation that went forward. We had several meetings and brought forth. So they were the ones that established the criteria of what we were going to go through or how we were going to bridge this, how we were going to move forward. So within our board, we have 2 board members from each one of our tribal nations that sit on our board that represent them through their nation. But they are not just board members. They're also tour coordinators and tour guides. So they do the combination of all that. We have other ones that are hired in within each nation, but they are the main point of contact for each of the tribal nations because we cannot speak for each tribe. Each tribe is different. It has to come within their own organization, their own nation, in speaking of itself. So that's how it was established, and we just been moving forward, and they were all a volunteer base. It was 100% volunteer, and they made it work. They had it done. And Bush Foundation came along, seen the work we were doing, and funded so I could be the executive director and move forward with all of it. So bringing forth, now with the compact of it is basically they have bridged. So the model is like, we did this, we've gone through this much stuff. But other states are reaching out to us. And so we are assisting other states to establish their alliances too. But we already went through the hiccups. We went through the do's and don'ts and all of that and what not to do. So we're trying to help the other states establish their own. We are working with 6 other states on other alliances right now. We have several of them that are bridging and going, moving forward, but it's all about baby steps. Because, I think Mālia was saying that every time we turn around, there's something else new out there, and we set our goals. We have a strategic plan for 5 years. And then 2 months later, it's like, oh no, we didn't think about this. It's just like the learning scale of what we need to do. And then bringing our elders and, our treaty council. We have 100% support, and that is very unique. And I think I'm really highly proud of NDNTA. We have all 5 tribal leaders. And you know how when they change office or termed out or whatever, we still continue to get that support. So we have 100% support from all of our tribal leaders. We report to them quarterly on our events. And when our first funding, when NDNTA was going to merge out on their own, the 5 tribal nations themselves provided seed money for them to get started. Before the Bush Foundation came along or any other grant came along, the tribes provided that financial support to keep them going and alive, which is, everybody knows, that's really rare that you get all 5 tribes financially supporting you. But they represent us at every level in DC, here in the state. Our tribal leaders always talk about tourism. They are developing, each one of our tribes are now developing infrastructure around tourism. So because of NDNTA, now they see the impact and the importance of it and what it can do, for the economy within their nations. So now they're building their infrastructure. But of course, how that goes. Funding is always an issue. I mean, where we're going to get our money from, but they are building it so we can have, family-friendly tours, year-round tours, so it's become to a lot of capacity. So we're getting there. But like I tell everybody, we may be the first, but then we still have our hiccups, but we are more than willing to share and help anybody, of what we went through so that they don't have to go through what we went through, learn those barriers, learn those challenges and move forward.
That's the beauty of partnerships, is you get to share best practices, not reinvent the wheel. If somebody else has already gone through a lesson, we do not have to go through that lesson twice.
Exactly.
Absolutely. You talked a little bit about the importance of having representation from within the communities. I feel like that is a widely kept mantra within any Indigenous community. People who live in the communities know that community best. So we need to be turning to them for solutions, for the highest priorities. I think one of them particularly that jumps out, at least for me, is how each Native community is able to express their traditional vision, their traditional values, and cultural, their viewpoints and their sacred sites in particular. You touched on that a little bit, Stacey, at the beginning. I would like to hear a little bit from each of you of how you see these communities balancing the need for economic development, but also balancing that with the protection of their sacred spaces and traditional lands. We even had a question in our chat of how do we strike that balance of keeping those spaces sacred, but still allowing room for tourism to come onto that land and to experience it in an authentic way. Mālia, if you would like to start off that conversation.
We've been really fortunate that a lot of our sacred sites are not only stewarded by community and lineal descendants of those whatever activations were on those sites, but we've had a lot of community groups write them up so that they stay protected forever. So we have our national historic parks, like our volcano and our fire goddess Pele, very important to our culture, very important to hula, as well as many other aspects of Hawaiian culture that are sitting in the National Park Service and protected in that way. For how long? that's anyone's guess. But for now, they're safe in that space. There's also national historic sites that are part of our cultural historic sites that are protected in that sense. And they're all stewarded by lineal descendants of these places. The other thing that I think I want to mention is the fact that we also don't share certain sites with our visitors. We actually have a do not promote list. It's not circulated. It's something that our Native Hawaiians that are involved in tourism have helped to create and help to steward over the years. And these are locations, sacred sites, sites that are hard to access, that have some kind of cultural significance. They're not on the list of things that you can see or do here in Hawaii. And there's always the risk that someone will find it and they'll put it on social media, but they're pretty good about making sure that we don't promote them in our marketing. The one place where I feel like hasn't had a lot of work done is on federal lands. For example, in Hawaii, we have a lot of military bases here because we are a strategic destination in the Pacific. And there are many, many sacred sites, historical sites that are on military property. So we don't have access to that. We aren't able to steward those regularly, depending on how high the level of clearance that you need in order to be in there. But there are places that haven't been visited or activated in over 40 years. And it's not because we don't want to, it's because we don't have access. And so building relationships with the Native Hawaiian 8A organizations who are responsible for these contracts within the federal government, there are a lot that are not engaging with the community around them, which is sad to say because these are supposed to be Native Hawaiian entities themselves. And so I don't know whether it's a capacity issue, whether just not the right people are in place, or maybe it's not the right time, because sometimes that's it too. Like, we haven't made a big enough fuss about it yet. And so how do we activate the fuss to happen so that we can regain control of these sites that need to be stewarded, that need to be activated because they are part of our living culture. And they're important to not only the resistance, but the resilience of our people. So those are the kinds of things I think of, to answer your question about sites and how we protect them.
That's beautifully put, Mālia. Sherry, Stacey, if you would like to add on anything to that over the years of your experience that you've seen.
Yeah, I think just to add on to what Stacey was saying as well, I think that the community buy-in or their investment in what is going to happen to their community, what is going to be shared is a must before you start down this path. I think everybody needs to be aware of initially what is tourism, right? Because I think in our communities, a lot of times tourism has a negative connotation to it. And the way I always talk about tourism is that, we've been here for thousands of years, welcoming people to our homelands, sharing our stories. And that's really what it's all about, is sharing our stories and educating the public. And I think with anything, your whole community needs to be involved in this. And, I've seen time and again, a lot of the communities across the nation, when they went down the route of hospitality and tourism, they made a conscious decision to keep not only the sacred spaces, but the living spaces of their people separate from where they're going to be welcoming visitors to their homelands. And so they made that conscious effort. And so the community was good with that, people wouldn't be coming to their living spaces and looking in their windows and taking photos and things like that, but that it was a separate area that they could share their culture and share of their community that was agreed upon by the community.
Can I just add on to that? So when we first started with NDNTA, that was the big thing, Sherry. It was just like nobody understood what tourism was. Our tribes was like, nope, you're not coming here, So we had a negative response for even the alliance to be established. But by going in and doing the community leadership, that was a huge impact. But then now, and they're the ones that brought this up, it's education. It's all about education and protocol. They want to come, visitors want to come, but some are afraid to even go, some don't know, but we have to make sure that we have protocol and procedures and etiquette for them, provide that to them before before they come within our nations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And that's something that we've seen at IANTA as well. And we get a lot of questions from media and from industry about protocols. Can I say this? Is it Native American, American Indian, Indigenous? What is it? So there's a lot of questions out there. So we did put together a one sheet on 15 protocols for visiting Indigenous lands. And then we worked with Leave No Trace as well on a few tools that tribes could utilize to educate the public about who they are, what is respectful, and what is our expectation of you as a visitor coming to our homelands, and letting people know up front what it is your expectation is, so that way when they get there, they know, they understand, and everybody has a great experience.
Mm-hmm.
If I could tack on to that, there's also things that happen, as far as sensitivity training or cultural awareness training, whatever you want to label it as. When Hawaii was responding to the devastating wildfires in Maui, that also came into play as far as how do we accept help from the federal government and philanthropists and all of these very large nonprofit organizations who are trying to get to Hawaii to help us, and how do we make sure that they are ready to help our community in the most respectful way when they engage with us. And so that was something that NAHA was engaged in creating. We created a familiarization training for the American Red Cross and the different fire departments that came to our aid, those that came with the search dogs and the cadaver dogs, and the FEMA. We did training with over 40,000 people that came to help us in that situation, so that there wasn't going to be, to prevent it as much as possible, conflict with community who are in a state of crisis and highly volatile, very emotional, and somewhat like a short fuse. They've experienced this tremendous trauma, and then all these people are coming into their spaces, and we didn't want them to experience any disrespect, just, with the innocence of not knowing, right? When you come to the aid of people, you want to be as well informed about how you respect their culture, any place that you go. And so with an Indigenous culture, that is even more highly sensitive. And so that is also something to take into consideration in your standard operating procedures for your tribes and for your communities. Develop some kind of plan, even if it's a short one-sheeter or 5 pages or whatever it is, to help those who may come to your aid on how best to respect you and your culture and the sensitivities of your culture. I think that's important too.
Especially in those times of high crisis, you don't want to take the time to have these conversations over and over and over again. You don't have the time. It's helpful to have those resources prepared. Absolutely. Mālia, I would like to ask you, you've worked in this industry for over 2 decades, as you said. What are some signs of a strong, culturally respectful tourism industry? We've talked a lot about of the don'ts, but what are the green flags? What are we striving to achieve here?
And I think tourism has been somewhat of an ebb and flow. It's the up and downs. As leadership changes, You know, there are new things that you may encounter and need to work through. It's not a scale that's always going upwards. It's got peaks and valleys. And that timing of being in this industry has really taught me, like, don't get ahead of yourself in thinking that getting to point B is a straight line, right? It's not. It's really a little left, a little right, a little up, a little down. Sometimes you have to slow down and back up, turn around, go back the other way. And as leadership changes at the echelon of tourism in your states or in your communities, you also have to be agile and adjust to that too. There's education that is involved in the partnerships that you seek to pursue. Part of that is an onboarding process with, you know, your state maybe. I mean, for us, that's who we're dealing with all the time, is the state, and new general managers that come in, and new executives in tourism that have some kind of fancy, innovative tourism product that may or may not be really good for your place. And you sort of have to navigate that relationship. And I think one of the things that all natives have a word for is the word patience. That value of patience in all Indigenous communities is real for us. And we've had to be very patient. Sometimes we want to say what we want to say, but we know that those words can cut like a knife, and it can be devastating to our people if we actually said what we wanted to. And so exhibiting that patience has been helpful to me. Also having great mentors around me, those that are 1 or 2 generations ahead of me, and also 1 or 2 generations behind me. I often throw, a text message out to 4 or 5 people and say, hey, what do you think of this? Because I really want to get the well-rounded feedback instead of having my own emotional response to it. Because as I said, I've been dealing with these things for 25 years. So when something pops up today that we addressed 25 years ago, and here it is raising its ugly head again, it's very frustrating to me. And I want to have an emotional response because I'm human, but I have to also remember that there are other people around me who believe in what I'm doing and believe just in the general idea of what we as Native Hawaiians are trying to accomplish. And I have to bounce those feelings or those ideas off of other people to get a well-rounded consensus of what needs to be done. You know, sometimes I will ask, what would you do if this email came across your desk? And they're real things that we're dealing with in real time that maybe, yes, they were addressed 20 years ago and here they are again. You know, so it is never a straight line. It's never A to B. It's lots of zigzags and squiggly lines and all kinds of circles. But it is the reality of what we are somewhat small in such a larger landscape. Tourism is global, and we are just these small communities here in the United States. And we have lots of our own issues to deal with and things to also address too. Like, not only are we trying to exercise tourism, but we're also trying to build trust even within our own communities and deal with generational trauma and levy resources in a way that, you know, we want to make smart decisions about what resources we have, whether those are natural resources or people resources. We need to be smart about the strategy of that. And so that's sort of my advice and my perspective. There are days where I'm like, oh my God, this cannot be happening. But at the same time, there's also great days of really great triumph where, like, yes, we needed that for our people. And I'm super proud of those people that went and pursued that thing, you know, so yeah.
It's a beautiful reminder, Mālia. Thank you. I want to open that up to Stacey and Sherry. If you have any other ideals that you particularly are working towards in your organizations or your communities at large.
So I'll go ahead and start out. I kind of talked a little bit about it when I was talking about the original accreditation program. And so this all came about because we entered into a limited partnership agreement with the Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada and New Zealand Maori Tourism to create a global organization called Destination Original Indigenous Tourism. And what this organization is all about is creating the space for Indigenous tourism around the world, to have a global brand like the Original that will be the brand that will show that it's an Indigenous owned business, that it's an authentic Indigenous experience, because the consumer is often confused by tour companies, for examples, that might be called native tours, but they're not Indigenous owned tours. And so they may go on that tour thinking they're getting the authentic story from Indigenous people of the United States, when in all reality, they are not. And so what this global brand is going to do is to improve that for the consumer, improve the tourism industry at large, because if we have a healthy tourism industry, which Indigenous tourism is a part of, that's a win-win for everybody around the world. And so I'm really excited about the Original accreditation program, and really excited about Destination Original Indigenous Tourism. But all of this needs support. All of this needs help. And, I look at Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada and the work that they've done with their First Nations people up there. They have about 2,000, 2,500 Indigenous owned businesses accredited. We have over 110,000 Indigenous owned businesses in the United States. So this is going to be a huge endeavor for us to accomplish, and we can't do this alone.
Thank you for that, Sherry. Stacey, would you like to add anything to that?
I just kind of wanted to piggyback off of Melina. I mean, when she was talking about the historical drama that we go through, one of our tribal leaders had told us, tourism basically is the aspect, he's telling our story, is actually healing. So we're actually being able to tell our true story, our oral history. And he said, in bridging that in, he said, so he was one of them that kind of helped me to help the other tribes understand what tourism actually meant and where it was going with and the avenue. So he stayed side by side with me and went to every one of our 5 tribal nations. But I always think that was a very impactful statement that he gave, is that, we have all of this, trauma. But how do we heal ourselves? By storytelling. And that's who we are.
Absolutely. That recognition that most of these fields that we work in are colonized fields. So making sure to take a step back and re-envisioning what that means through a tribal lens, an Indigenous lens, and a Native lens first. That's a beautiful ideal to work for. Thank you for sharing that, Stacey. I would like to ask, specifically because we've touched a little bit about the importance of really any organization in general, but particularly for the organizations that work and that thrive in this space, funding opportunities. With Native Americans in Philanthropy hosting you all here today, I'm sure that our audience would be most interested in hearing what opportunities exist for philanthropy to collaborate with your work in strengthening and expanding authentic Indigenous tourism within this nation. If Stacey, you would like to start us off, I know you spoke a little bit about the foundation that the Alliance has worked with in the past.
Well, I think the bigger picture is, so now we are, we're 100% Native led. We're 100% telling our own stories. So everything is, indigenized now. And we are building that capacity to preserve, protecting, and respecting ourselves. But we need to build a sustainable economy through tourism for our tribal nations. But how do we go about that when you can't? I mean, it's tougher and tougher to find funding. There are some funds that are out there that help you to develop that, but like it's always an ongoing effort on our goals in our strategic plan of, like we were talking before. So we start a strategic plan, we're moving forward and we're doing that, and then something comes up, and then like our history comes back, or maybe an elder comes forward and says, no, we need to do it this way, or you need to do it that way, or somebody else says there's a different plan. But try to find that funding. 2 of our tribes here in North Dakota have been doing pretty well, and the state has been working with them to build that capacity within their own tribe. Like I was saying, the family friendly, everybody's going to bring, we're known as the fly and drive state. So people just fly in and drive, but they want to see Indian country. They contact us, we send them to a tribe. But if they're a family, you can do a tour, but what else is there for, the family to do? So expanding that, bridge of infrastructure in which they are, but there's no funding out there for them. They can grab a little bit at a time, but it's just like funding is really, I think, the biggest element, because we have 3 of our tribes that do not have a tourism department. So we rely on other entities, to build that capacity, either a heritage center or a casino, that capacity, but trying to build that tourism development structure within our own nation is, I think, is on high demand.
Sherry, Mālia, would you like to talk a little bit more about the position that philanthropy could have in this capacity building?
Go ahead, Mālia.
I think sometimes, I guess one of the concerns that I've noticed with philanthropic organizations, especially in Hawaii, and maybe it's because we're so geographically removed, and also there's a lot of confusion over what is Hawaiian and what is not Hawaiian, because there are very limited laws that protect a Native Hawaiian cultural practitioner from someone who is not Native, who represents the same thing in our culture. I know that there are laws on file for Native Americans that protect your art, your artisans, but these same laws don't exist for the Native Hawaiian community. So most recently, just to share an example, I had someone call and say, I really want to make a donation to a reforestation project in Hawaii. Can you share some advice about who is legitimate? Because I found this one organization and I want to know if they're legitimate or not. And after I did some digging, I looked at how many different philanthropic organizations were actually funding this one reforestation project, and it wasn't even legitimately in Hawaii. So I think sometimes I definitely have concerns over when you're far reaching across the sea and you're trying to be supportive and use your dollar in the most effective way to help an Indigenous community. You got to make sure that you vet that Indigenous entity first. And that doesn't mean calling them directly and asking them. You want to call everybody around them and ask about them to make sure that you're not throwing money at the wrong thing. And that's just one example of what happens here in Hawaii. Often the most bougiest stuff gets philanthropic support, and it's not really where the community need is. So that's just a lesson from my destination. I think for me in tourism, one of the greatest challenges is around funding. And it's also, we have state contracts that come out all the time. Just yesterday, one came out. And when you start reading the details of some of these contracts, they want to control our cultural IP. How do I fight the state of Hawaii? How do I fight these huge, large organizations that have a lot of power and control that I don't have control? I don't have control over what they put out or what they say, right? And it's like, we really need the support of, I've never had a philanthropic organization support NAHA. I've always had to go find my own money, either in grants or in contracting with the state of Hawaii. And sometimes those contracts and grants compromise NAHA a little, because they're asking for something very, very specific. and maybe I would have chose to do it a different way. And so when I do find grants that allow for the flexibility and agileness that some of our programs require, I'm excited about those things, but they're always highly competitive. This grant season, only the Office of Native Hawaiian Relations is the only grant that came out for tourism for Native Hawaiians specifically. One grant. And there's 650,000 of us worldwide. How does $3 million divide in an equitable way to create systematic change? It's really hard. And so without the support of those who believe in the cause, who have the means to support these really amazing organizations here in Hawaii, nonprofits are really our only way of exercising our sovereignty. Nonprofits in Hawaii are addressing the critical need in community here. There is no Native corporation here. None of that exists. And so my message to philanthropists is really, if you really want to create systematic change in places where I live, do your homework, do your vetting, and also make sure that what you're trying to address really does address a critical need in the community. Because that's what we're trying to do at NAHA, is support from a cultural perspective tourism. We've been doing this for 28 years now, and it's been a struggle every single day. Every single day it's a struggle.
That is part of a much wider conversation within the philanthropic sector as a whole, is the need for more trust-based grants that allow for that flexibility of the need for operational funding, the need for all of these different kinds of funding to be able to do what your community needs the most. So I thank you, Mālia, for bringing that up. Sherry, if you would like to add anything to ask or to highlight for our philanthropic audience.
No, I mean, I totally agree with what the ladies have said. And, you know, we're a national Native organization, Native-led, 15 board members from all across the country, and Mālia is one of them from Hawaii. And it's difficult because, as I've mentioned before, you know, the tourism industry really isn't set up for us as Indigenous people, and we do our best to create those partnerships, but we don't receive room tax funds either to support tourism marketing of our Indigenous destinations and experiences. We don't receive funding from the federal government for tourism. We receive minimal funding from Brand USA, who is the marketing organization for the entire country. So we're going it alone out here at this point. And but what we're trying to do is to ensure that we're providing not only the tools and the resources for our Indigenous owned businesses, but also the marketing for that, because you can have an amazing experience, you can have an amazing destination out there, but if nobody knows about it, they're not going to come. And so not only are we trying to not only are we going to bring original that model to this country, which will create the structure and for a trusted tourism branding mechanism for tourism, which will allow entry points for participation in the existing tourism infrastructure. So I'm hoping this will help Native Hawaiian owned businesses as well in Hawaii. But again, we need philanthropy support to ensure that this is completed. I talked about the scale of what we have to do here in the United States compared to what has been done in Canada. I mean, 2,000 compared to 120,000 here in the US with no support. So we need philanthropy to come around us in this work for our Indigenous communities across the country.
Thank
Can I
you.
just piggyback off of what Sherry said? I'm glad you brought that up because tourism is a huge impact for our small entrepreneurs within each nation. And that's what we do. Well, I think everybody does that. With tourism, we bring them in and we're helping them building their capacity to be that entrepreneur, to build that business up. They are small and they are ignored. They don't have the help that they should be having. And so we bring them in. We partner with another organization that helps provide these trainings to them to understand so they can build up their artisans or whatever they might be doing. But when we bring visitors in, we send them to them. Let's promote them. Let's market them. Let's get them out there. That is a huge capacity of tourism that we bring in. And I think everybody is doing that anyway, is just bringing, helping our small entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for sharing what you'd like to see from specifically the philanthropic sector. I would like, as we near the end of this conversation, we would like to give you guys the closing word here. Again, our audience typically spans the entire public sector and beyond. We have lots of funders in our audience. We have lots of regional and larger Native nonprofits. We have elected officials, budding future leaders within our audience. What is something that they can do? What's your closing call to action for our people here today? Mālia, I will offer that to you first.
No pressure.
Not at all.
I think for Hawaii, I would love to see more philanthropic organizations bring a new dimension to funding here in Hawaii. As I said, grants have all dried up, specifically for Native Hawaiian entities. There's also, the CDFI world. I just recently went to a conference to learn about what that is. But I think one of the challenges for Hawaii is that we're already economically at the high end of our debt ratio to our income. And so that doesn't always work for Native Hawaiian entrepreneurs to take on another loan. And so we're really dealing with some unique things here. And I would really like to see, instead of us feeling alone, like, how do we be alone together? Sherry and I have shared that phrase a lot because Hawaii is geographically separated. And sometimes there are more similarities with those that are in the Pacific who are dealing with quite large economic disparity in their native nations in the South Pacific. So to see our Native American cousins, many of them who have their own corporations, have their own hospitality entities, to see when you go and visit a destination to see how they are thriving. How do I bring that knowledge back to Hawaii? How do I support that within my own community? How do I drive Native Hawaiian small business? We do have cohort programs that we create and execute every year, but how do I find opportunities for them to grow beyond the programs that I have? How do I get them to the next level? And so I think that's, for me, where I think philanthropy can serve a great purpose in my community. And I'd like to see more of that happening where I am.
Thank you, Mālia. Sherry, I'll offer that to you. Again, no pressure.
All right. Well, has never been such a high degree of demand for Indigenous experiences than now. I think that had a lot to do with COVID. And so we need your help to ensure that we have Indigenous-owned businesses that are business ready, market ready, and export ready. So we are competitive with the global market. We can do this through adaptation and implementation of the original accreditation program here in the United States. The original is a mark of excellence that has been designed to address product trust issues by assuring visitors of a truly authentic, high quality, and safe experience. And so I think that we can do this together. As we've been talking about this entire webinar, partnerships are so important, and we want to be partners with you.
Thank you, Sherry. And Stacey, if you would like to offer any of your calls to actions that you'd like to insert here.
I just want to really intensify on the importance of tribal tourism. I mean, it gives us the opportunity to have a voice and tell our own story. So this is unique and rare of what we are doing, what all of us are doing within our own organizations and beyond. But it's just like the funding is not there to help. I mean, like when I was saying, the grants are drying up. We don't have that, but to believe in us, and a lot of people have to say, what is tourism? How are you helping? You know, how is that outreach? You know, what is the need and command or demand? But the demand is to visitors want to come see us, but we need to have the funding to be, well, marketing, of course, but economic, your tourism development. Are our tribes ready? How can we help our tribal nations or our community? And that would be our entrepreneurs. How do we help our community build that capacity when there isn't any funding out there? And yeah, we can work with our states, but the state market us, well, we don't receive the funding from that. It's, you know, they utilize us, but the funding isn't there. So we are out searching for funding constantly to help each one of our tribal nations within our state. And even South Dakota is going through the same thing because I sit on their board too. It's just like the funding is in high capacity, but who believes in us? Who believes our demand? I mean, we are on the ground working. We are grassroots people speaking our own voices. We know our history and our story, but to get out there to the funders and tell our story. But on other aspects, if you look at the other, you know, our small entrepreneurs or some of our people, if they apply for something, apply for a grant, our people we're oral people. So it's hard to put here to paper. We need, you know, organizations with applications. And I know of 2 organizations that started this, and I think it's amazing. The Good Relatives. So your application process, if they will do an oral interview with you and help you write it to paper, because that's how our entrepreneurs are. But see, application processing with some of these grants too is stringent because they don't really fit into our criteria or our application process, you know, our eligibility on how we can apply. So we're already, you know, when we apply, we're already denied. So bringing the application process, understanding, you know, Indian country, who we are and how we process our, you know, our angle of things, and we're all oral. You know, we know it's in our head. We know we have a good thing out there, but how do we get it all on paper without, you know, hiring a grant writer?
Thank you so much, Stacey. I really do feel like there is so much untapped potential, both within the tribal tourism industry, within Native philanthropy in general. We have so much opportunity to evolve these sectors to benefit Native communities first and foremost, in an authentic way, in a respectful way, and for the long term. That's really what we're hoping for here, is to make sure that the next 7 generations are able to enjoy these spaces, these beautiful lands that we live on, and to experience different cultures and hear new perspectives. So I thank each of you from the bottom of my heart. This has been an incredible conversation. I've personally learned so much. I hope that our audience has as well. Thank you so much for taking the time truly to sit with our network of members, to just share the lessons that you've learned over the years of experience, and really uplift the work that your organizations are doing. I'm so excited about the projects that are upcoming for each of you. We are happy to continue this conversation in other areas of shared learning. So we hope that you will collaborate with us again in the future. Truly, thank you each so much for your time today.
Mahalo.
Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you. I will pass it over to our NAP representative once again now to close out this conversation, and look forward to new spaces of collaboration. Again, thank you to everyone who's joined with us today. Ahiahet Nitsago.
Thank you all for joining us today and being a part of this important conversation around tribal tourism. We hope you leave with a deeper appreciation for the ways tourism supports the economic well-being of our tribal communities and how it also offers a powerful opportunity for connection, learning, and celebration. As Native people, we love sharing our stories, traditions, and lands with those who come with curiosity and respect. We truly value guests who are open to experiencing our culture in meaningful ways. We encourage you to seek out events, businesses, and opportunities happening in Native communities near you. Be present, be supportive, and be a part of what's growing. There are so many opportunities to be a part of events and initiatives that help lift up Native voices and stories. Together, we can build stronger relationships and a deeper understanding across all communities. And now, as a reminder, this session was open to the public as a highlight of our member benefits. NAT membership is open to Indigenous relatives and non-Indigenous allies. If you're not a NAT member yet and want to learn more, please visit our website at nativephilanthropy.org or email our team at membership@nativephilanthropy.org. Lastly, you should be receiving an email with a link to a short survey. If you could please take a few moments to share your opinions and what you'd like to see in future sessions. It should take about 5 to 6 minutes to complete, but provides invaluable feedback for our team and planning. As our team looks forward, we are excited to continue offering this space of collective learning. Make sure to join us again next month as we celebrate Pride Month in solidarity with our Two-Spirit and queer Indigenous relatives. We will be joined by community leaders from across Turtle Island on June 25th for Uniting Queer Voices Across Cultures, and hope to see you there. Wopila Tonka, Doksha Ke, Wanchian King Kte. Thank you so much. I will see you all again eventually.